Welcome to Unbiased and on the Fence. I'm Shane. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this wonderful Tuesday. Myself and Michelle. How are you doing, Michelle?
Great, good. A little woozy today, but really missed you. So, yeah, just happy to be back with you guys and share.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm glad to be back too. Super high vibe energy still going after the conference. And even now, I was like, oh man, the Schumann's got to be off the charts today. But we did have a blast on the 17th, correct?
We did, which is we just keep getting these blasts or missing information. I think last month it actually went, was it last month or the month before? I can't remember. But
Yeah.
one of the blocks of missing information was on the 17th. We've seen repeated, and it's not so much the height of the like the level of the blast. Like I think this was like 37 to 40 hertz or whatever. It's the longevity of it. It's this duration, this extended solid blast that keeps happening.
Yeah. And it got up to, you said it got up in the 30s this time?
Yeah, close to 40 hertz.
So
So
it's
I
weird
think
that
I've been feeling that the last few days. I've really kind of felt it and the process of it pushing through. So it's down to the lower area now. And yeah, hopefully
well,
by the end of today, I'll be moving past that.
one of the things that we both mentioned before we went live was that really emotional. I've been like really operating a lot from the heart, finding it really hard to watch anything that's sort of heart based or touching, not to cry or even to tell somebody about it. Like, oh, you got to you got to watch this, and then you try to tell them about it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't. You got to just watch it because you're going to start crying if you. But super duper emotional. But
Just
it's a
feeling
good.
but
It's
a joy because the
joyous.
joy of it.
It's a joyous sort of
Not
crying.
watching sad stuff to
No,
make you not the same thing as watching like sad movies to that make you, oh no, that
it's the
it's like
joy.
watching stuff that is making you so like happy and joyous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that been doing that too.
So I put out a
So
video a couple of days ago talking about the parables, and that revelation actually came to me while we were talking before we went live the very last time. I realized, and it sort of all came to me, and so I did this video about it. I actually put it in my presentation that I gave because I thought it connected with this whole idea of things being revealed, this revelation of things happening, and then I had several people at Cynthia Sue Larson, and a few other people had sent me the video that I sent you that was about Project Looking Glass. And I was
mm,
just so blown away that all of this stuff is connecting, all the revelations. Like, you look up apocalypse and it will say, some kind of cataclysmic event or something. If you look it up in Google, and then right underneath it says, what does apocalypse really mean? And then you click on that and it says, it means a revealing, the veil being dropped. And that's
mm-hmm.
what this whole Project Looking Glass thing. So, like, even that I was crying about because I'm like, oh, this is because that interview was from the beginning of 2012 with Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot that she did with, I can't even think of the guy's name, but that link is in the
Mm-hmm.
video. And yeah, this whole idea of them having this technology to see into the future, for those of you that didn't see it, and they kept hitting sort of a roadblock around 2012, and they really wouldn't reveal what it was. But what it was is the end of their lies, their deception, all of that coming out. And then that brought back the whole scripture of Jesus saying those things whispered in the inner room will be shouted from the rooftops.
Yes.
So it's all
Yes.
happening.
It really is. There's so many of connections that you can pull together in watching that information. That's what we were really talking about before we came on today. Here's 333 here. Happy 333. Um, and it's just such a beautiful, amazing web, like of how you can see the dynamics of, their struggle to control the truth, and the truth coming out, and them not being able to release control
Yeah.
of an outcome. Amazing video that really kind of shows how you, you think, well, how do they look into the future through a computer? What kind of nonsense is that?
Yeah.
And what are timelines, and how does that all work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how can they see these timelines? It's really, this understanding of probabilities and possibilities, and that
And the
what
convergence that they were seeing
and
happening.
what it was showing is that no matter what lane you were going down, no matter what choice was made, there was a checkmate point.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. The game was already done. There was a convergence of timelines, and I think that's really what we've been experiencing since 2012, 2011, 2012, which was, that's, I think it was predicted. It was like, a lot of the information, like 30 years. Like, was it the
It
law of
was the law of
one?
one. Ra was talking about harvest happening in 30 years, way
Yeah,
back in 81. Yeah.
and when that timeline is, and it really is all about that that time period of 2012. And I think that's really what we've been experiencing then, is seeing masses of these timelines now shutting down, approaching this convergence point,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how that's gonna play out. So no matter what they do, but that really is the crux of it, is that they're trying to still, no matter what they've been told, no matter what evidence they've been given, they refuse to release control of the outcome.
They'll never
They
release control.
refuse to release control of the
They're
outcome. You
delusional.
know,
They've been delusional to be
yeah,
as they
and she's
are,
like,
you know?
why? She's like, why would they do that? Because they're insane. And that is the insanity, to think that you have this control.
Yeah. And I
It's,
always
yeah.
think of it like, to sort of move out of the victim mentality, I think of it like they happen to be the villains. They're there to sort of, as they say, rock sharpens iron, or, you use sort of a grinding stone to sharpen your knives. And you have to have that contrast there for maximum growth. And when you move out of, these people are doing this to us and it's a victim mentality sort of thing, then you realize that they really have their place. They're actually helping us. They're giving us, like, if we didn't have the earth to oppose us, the ground, we would just fall straight through, right? So there's always that contrast that is actually helpful when you can get out of the victim mentality and realize that, like the Mandela Effect, we are the champions. I think of the world went away because we're the champions of the world and beyond. I mean, there's no limit to how big of a champion, how big of a hero we can be. And these villains are just there like ghosts on Pac-Man, and we're about to eat our little pellets and gobble
Yeah.
them up, right? So to
Well, I
speak.
think that's really the funny thing, is it doesn't matter the adversity. So you don't want to claim that adversity, because it doesn't matter the adversity that they try to throw at you.
It's only going to help
It's
in the
only
end.
going to boomerang. It
Yeah.
only boomerangs, and it's only if you catch that ball they throw at you, catch that boomerang, and hold it for yourself, that you're going to hold their narrative, that
Yeah.
you're holding their narrative. So you just, yeah, don't catch what they're throwing at you. And I think that's a case with so many of these different concepts that are put out there about um end of the world, and what an apocalypse is, right? And the
Yeah.
perspective of the apocalypse,
Yeah.
and what that means. And
Because they're going to put it
those
off like the end of the world when it's the end of their world, because of course they want the lies to continue, but it's all being exposed.
But it's not God's world.
No.
They don't want to live in God's world. They want to live in their world.
Exactly.
And that really is the big decision
Mm-hmm.
that you have to realize. And that's what we're all being called to do. And once you're called to do that in your heart, and you invite that in, then the truth, this is when you wake up, you start to really see the truth,
Mm-hmm.
you know And
we're seeing an increase in that too. Those with eyes to see are beginning to see, those with ears to hear, just like Jesus talked about. It's all coming to fruition at this time. I mean, we can really see it all unfolding, not only with the Mandela
yeah,
effects, but with earth changes that some assume maybe they are Mandela effects because, like, the rainbow mountains appear to have always been that way. We do see things in nature, all these beautiful, colorful animals and insects popping on the scene that I've never seen that are just, I'm in awe when I see them, you know? They're just
mm-hmm,
beautiful.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it just, I think that's it. It just keeps shifting and changing around us, refocusing, just like your, that's like, just like your camera just did. Your camera just went like, zzz, zzz, right? And refocused. That's kind of like what's happening with these timelines. I think every time we're shift, it's just refocusing and narrowing that band down closer and closer to that oneness of timeline and experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, an experience and oneness with this energy.
That's
This,
exciting. It's even
it
overwhelming at
is.
times, even though it's a good feeling. Sometimes it's like you're going down on a roller coaster and it's like, wee, you know, it's like really
Yeah,
intense.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. And then sometimes things are really quiet, and you're like, oh, why are things so quiet? Yeah, it's a pro, but I really am feeling the build up. I always do it at this time of year when we come into like 6 weeks, the end of the year, and it's a real sort of kind of review time, and then tuning into um where I'm sensing that's brought me energetically, and what I'm sensing is coming in. It's when I really start to tune into what the energy of the next year
Hmm.
is bringing.
Yeah. And that
And
gratitude you were talking about too, I think is so, so important. You know, I mean, if you look at the work of Greg Braden and how they do these seemingly supernatural, magical healings on people, it's like
yes,
they have a gratitude for it being done already, and then they
the
see it,
miracles.
yeah, and they see it happen only after they begin to resonate and become one with their feeling, emotion, and thought, all become one, and then the manifestation happens, and it comes
Yeah.
from feeling it and having that gratitude for it being done already, and
Yeah.
that's the missing
And the
key.
joy and the boo, so you're just like buzz, buzz, buzz. You need to be in that frequency to make that magic happen,
Yeah, the
right? That's
vortex, like Abraham Hicks talks about, being in the vortex. That's exactly what she's talking about. You know.
Yeah, yeah. And that's being in the flow. And but part of it too is that you're not pushing your agenda. Like if you're pushing your agenda in that process, that's only going to get you so far. It is going to get you results.
Right. But it's
It
operating
is.
from the
We
ego and the
That's the
judgment,
difference between doing magic, I think,
manipulating.
and miracles.
Yeah.
That those are from God and from that energy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that the magic side of it is just controlling things for your purposes,
Mm-hmm. And that gets back to
not
the
for
whole.
God's purpose.
Yeah, that gets back to the whole, like,
Controlling.
the left and the right brain, the
Hmm.
divine masculine and the divine feminine, the way we're out of whack or out of balance, or we have Looney Tunes, as the Mandela Effect says, and it's like bringing
Hmm.
in that whole divine feminine balance back is what's going to bring in the love and the nurturing and the service to others, as the Law of One talks about. It's all connected. It's everybody's talking about the same thing in different ways, you
Yes,
know.
in their own creative way, right? And
Mm-hmm.
because of their own experience, their own story, their own testimonial, um, that yeah, I think that's it. There's just so many people. You're seeing waves of people that have had these pivotal moments, life-changing moments, no matter their age now,
Mm-hmm.
over the last, since, like, especially since, I mean, there's some before, but en masse, there's peak times here about 2012 and 2016. And then I think in turn we're going to see that 2019 was also a mass energetic, like people having experiences in some way beyond anything in their reality that pushes them outside of the reality
I
box.
just heard hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
2020 next year, we're gonna be able to look back and see, you know, that whole. Yeah,
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's really, it's going to be a lot of interesting things next
It's
year.
hard to believe we're almost to 2020 already, you know?
It's, it really is becoming a blur this month,
It's
even
exciting though.
faster.
That's the main thing, is that you can really get into the excitement of it and get into that vortex and be a part of helping create this just by
Hmm.
feeling it. Just that's all you got to do, is
Hmm.
bring your emotions and feeling and thoughts into alignment, and
Yeah.
we're changing the world, you know. And we think, how can I do that? But if we're all doing it, the more people
Just
that
to,
join in, it's
you
like a
just
tug
keep
of war.
admitting it. Just like, if it's, don't, you don't need to make it complicated, right? Of how can I help, and you can't think of something, so you feel like, well, I don't know what to do, or I don't know what I'm good at. Literally, it's just like, just be a light bulb. Just
Yeah,
be a light bulb.
that's so
Just be the,
important.
just be that. Just be that energy and
Yeah,
admit it. Boom,
because
thank
we're all
you.
connected, you guys. So even if we're just
It's
working
that
on
simple.
ourself and our home,
Hmm.
that if that's all you can do, and just to resonate in that, and to, you'll see what you're doing on the inside begin to be reflected in the external world, and you feel like
Hmm.
you're not connected because maybe you're in the confines of your own walls of your home or whatever, but we're all connected. This energy is just flowing, and I think it's our job
Yeah.
as love light workers to pull that cosmic energy in from God and radiate it out, and it will take a big effect.
It's really the most important place to start. And I think if you're too distracted on doing those outside things, it takes you away from the simplicity of that, and you can forget to then be that light bulb. And then because you're working a narrative.
Yeah, and
You're
how do we
working
know?
a.
Because they're
Mhm.
constantly feeding us stuff to keep us in fear and worry. Oh my God, the end of the world's coming. Why are they building underground bunkers? Okay, because they're delusional. They don't realize it's
Yeah,
all
because it's crazy.
because they think they can hide from what's coming, but you can't
What's
hide from what's
coming?
coming. I mean,
Let
it
that
even
give
says
you
that in the
joy.
Bible. They'll try to hide
Yeah.
themselves in the rocks and the mountains, but they won't be
Doesn't
able to hide
matter
from
what
this.
they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, so when you hear this stuff, like, it's almost like I take joy in that fact now. Like, instead of having that sort of gut clench reaction when, if I come across news that could look like, you know, it's bad for us, or it's
Chaotic
a hit
stuff.
to the white
Yeah.
hats, or it's something like that. I really have released that reaction completely, because it's like, it doesn't matter how it appears on the surface right now. At that, how it may appear on the surface does not matter. And I think that's why it's so important for everybody to go take a look at that link you're going to post about this looking glass project, in that it doesn't matter, because it all leads back to this ascension.
And it's checkmate, whether they
It's
like it or not.
checkmate.
We
It's
might
already
be
done.
7 moves from
Just because
checkmate.
you're watching them still play the moves on the board, but
It's done. It's already done.
yeah, yeah.
And like
So
I hear my mom. I was raised ultra religious or whatever, but I still hear my mom saying certain things. And one of the things I hear from time to time, when things look like you were talking about, it looks like maybe it was a hit to the white hats, maybe we took a blow, maybe it was 2 steps back, and all of this is what the devil means for evil, God will turn to good. And I
yes.
hear that all the time. You know what I mean? I think that's a great analogy, that just because things look grim, I mean, if you think about it, the whole storyline, I thought about this with Angela's BQH. It seemed like things were bleak and grim, and then at the last minute, things are going to change. And why? I mean, that's how a good movie is, right?
Hmm.
Rocky or whatever. He's against the ropes. He looks like it's over and all that. And then he gets up and then, like, kicks butt, right? And then it's like
Yeah,
that's how any good story plays out. So just enjoy the show. Don't get too distracted.
exactly.
Keep your vibes up, right?
Yeah, just be in that joy of knowing, like, what's coming. It's like, you know what's under the Christmas tree. You don't know exactly what it is, but you know it's good.
Right.
You
Yep.
don't know, but it's there, right?
The best is yet to
So
come. It's far
yeah.
beyond our imagination. So I think the expectations, as we talked about before, if we let go of the expectations and just understand that end result, feel that end result of things being perfectly aligned, perfectly unified, perfectly in order, the chaos dissolving away, and just resonate in that, you don't have to have the details of how it all is going to play out. You just know that
Yeah.
it is going to play out right. You know.
Well, I think you know what's good to maybe bring up too is, and what we've dealt with over the last couple years, and when dealing with dates and things, it's like something, something's going to happen. You think is something's big is going to happen by a certain point, and well, when is something feeling like, well, when is something going to happen? I mean, I've certainly felt like this, and if I have to go through this, then why do I got to feel like this? Why can't I have that energy with me, right now? And um oh, I'm losing my train of thought.
Oh, but breathing. It just came to me right now. The thing that's been coming to me all the time is breathing and just breathing that in because you can feel that at any time. If you're feeling impatient, like you were just saying,
Yeah,
like you're just
that's where you have to take a that's where you have to breathe. And but it really is, if we can keep remembering, like, this information is really helpful for if you are feeling like that,
mm-hmm.
because it really is an affirmation that no matter what. The other thing I wanted to say is, how we've seen synchronicities really picking up
Oh
fast,
yeah,
right?
off
That
the
that sort of
chain. Yeah.
instant thing. I also want to suggest that, what I talked about, that boomerang,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of karmic response of like what you're putting out there coming back to you, that what we're seeing right now is it's kind of like the same thing with the synchronicities, how fast that is picking up. Like, that's how fast that is coming back to them. Like, so that is really speeding up as well.
Spiritual
um
Life says, "I the Tiger" is my up the amp song. Yeah, I like that. "I the
mhm,
Tiger." Yeah, I should have thought of that one. The "I the Tiger" song is
mhm,
the top. I love that.
mhm.
Really gets
Yeah,
you pumped up.
it does. Well, that sort of thing helps too, is, when we're feeling down, look for those things. I find the music really comes into my head naturally. Like, we used to do, you had all those conversations I know were really helpful for a lot of people with Nathan about the songs, and how you can sort of ask questions in your head and you'll find these answers come up. And
Mm-hmm.
I've really noticed that I don't even need to do that, that the songs just come up in my head on their own. Like, stuff I
Yeah.
have random, it'll just like come in and just speak to me on its own. And then I can just go and listen to the song and get that message and feel like immediately feel that response. You feel the goosebumps, your eyes well up. You have, that connection, you feel the connection and the communication, and that, that message being given to you. So
Absolutely, yeah. I know we
that's really
talked
picked
about
up.
using like Pandora or something, but I've had songs just pop in
Don't
my
need to.
head
Mm-hmm.
just out of the clear blue, and I'm like, wow, why did that? Even my first
Yeah.
Michael Jackson experience was a Jackson 5 song popping in my head, and I was like, what? Why would that song pop in my head? It took me a while
Yeah.
to figure out what it even was. I've had "Burning Down the House" pop in my
Yeah.
head because my daughter burnt some toast, and I went
Yeah.
out and I smelled it, and then I'm like, wait a minute, was there a Mandela effect? So I looked it up. I didn't find a Mandela effect, but I looked up the meaning of the song, and it said, there's no meaning to the song. But if you really want a meaning to the song, you can look to a quote from Rumi, who talked about burning down the house being burning down the ego. So, like, from burnt toast, I ended up with a quote from Rumi about, about the ego and all this. And I was like,
Mhm.
it's just a crazy life I live at times. Following these little synchronicities and messages. But it not only music, I mean, it comes in it could be a link someone sends you to a video that you needed to see
Yeah.
that sort of answers this lingering
So many.
question. Yeah,
Yeah.
just, or a
So many
bumper
things
sticker, an advertisement, anything. It could be
yeah.
anything.
And that's it. It's like everything you observe starts to become like a tapestry that you can read. It's like it's a wee world. And um so we're not pinpoint focusing on like one source of information, like the television or whatever, like we used to. We're we're observing sort of everything in all these synchronicities. They begin to tell a story. They weave the picture. They weave all these connections,
Yeah.
these things that don't, if you were focusing this way, you wouldn't see that they are connected. But when you stand back, you see this weave
Mm-hmm.
of connections. So it's a different way to to read your experience, to get your information.
Yeah. And you can quite
Um,
literally get it from, I get it from pareidolia a lot, like seeing shapes in the clouds or seeing shadows in the ground, or even I think recently I had, this is going to sound really crazy to people I know, but I got to share it with you because like if anybody would get it, you guys would get it. I set a fork down, it had rice on it and a pea right in the middle, and it made a face on the fork. And then the four prongs looked like an 1111. So it was, I know how crazy it sounds, but it was like the universe is smiling back at me and communicating with me through anywhere I look at this point. And it's just, it gets really bizarre at times.
and I think that that really is what, like, what was coming to me is that like that's listening to your heart
Yeah.
as opposed to listening to your mind.
And being present. That's very important because I
Yeah,
would have
and
never noticed it if I wasn't present.
no, exactly, because you're reading your environment in a different way. Yeah. So, and it becomes beautiful
It does.
and magical and funny
And funny.
and
Very, very funny.
silly.
And silly. Yeah.
You know, I'm often reminded to just, yeah, to release that, to unclench, to laugh,
And
and
you start to realize that you're never alone. Even at times when you feel alone, you're never alone. You're always being looked after. You can always ask for help. And just being present in the moment, you can see so much. I've been noticing a lot more third eye things, seeing things with my third
mhm.
eye. We talked about, was that before we went live? We were talking about orbs and stuff. I just saw
That
little,
was before we went on. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Should I tell that one?
Yeah, tell the one with Travis. That's awesome.
So, because you know, Dolly's been putting out, if Dolly's here, hi. She's been putting out videos, and hi to Eileen as well. One, she's put out some videos on doing, you know, catching the orbs and stuff, right? And I just have always thought that's cool. But I was having conversation with Trav, and he was in his car, and we are talking for a couple hours, like we usually do. But the entire time, and I've never seen anything like this before. Uh, there was an orb just weaving around and going around in the car, and I would often see, I would see like these little sort of staticky kind of sparkle, like a little sort of staticky spot, and then I would see the orb whoop, like sort of weave down in front of them, and it would bob and weave back, and it would sort of come in and do that orby thing that they do where they sort of go, the focus kind of changes on them, they kind of go, you know,
Right.
sort of pulse or whatever it is, and it did
Mm-hmm.
that. And at one point it actually even, you know, came from the back and spiraled, circled like this all the way up to the camera, like
Just
we
playing with
like
you.
this,
Yeah.
just playing like, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, of course I've seen films of orbs and stuff. You know, I have sort of seen, I
Kind
mean,
of
I've
rules
talked to
out
you and
dust, doesn't
seen
it?
stuff, but what's that?
I said it kind of rules out dust when it
It
does
does. Like,
things like
yeah,
that.
you had me at hello. Like it just, like, yeah, okay, you convinced me, totally convinced me.
Of course, there
So
people will be like, well, you know, they have smart dust now. I'm just playing.
yeah, yeah, smart dust for sure. But again, I would say perspective.
Right.
So, uh, yeah, that was an amazing experience. And then since then, I've really noticed, you know, what picked up was a lot of like peripheral. You know, at first it was here, and then I found, you know, like a month ago, it was like I was starting to get a lot of stuff that was kind of, you know, up here, was coming more direct, but still sort of above
Mm-hmm.
my direct line of sight that I
Mm-hmm.
was viewing at the moment. But what started happening is just all this stuff just like directly in my line of vision, you know, not out of the corner of my eye or whatever, just like,
Yeah.
oh, hello. And
Right.
I'm not even sure what I'm seeing. I I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I
It's
don't know.
like
I hear it could
it's
be spirit guides or angels, or I hear all sorts of things. I
I
think in one
I don't
session it
know.
came through, Eileen's session, it came through that it's like sort of our portal to all of the angels or our higher self and all of that.
Right.
We've got this
Right.
sort of portal there that's always there. And I've noticed it right here in front of me, you know, like
Yeah.
just sort of just hanging out, letting you know, hey, it's there,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
just like, and I don't know how to explain what it is. It doesn't. like when that happens, I wouldn't say it looks exactly like it does on viewing it on the camera. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
like I'm seeing that orby pulsation thing.
Right.
I, I don't I don't know. I don't know how much. It's just an awareness like that something is moving there.
Right. Well, I explained it before that I had this one in the car that I was sitting in the car and I felt something on my arm, like almost like a needle, or maybe I got like was getting a mosquito bite or something. It was just like a little tiny prick on my finger, or my arm, my forearm. And I looked down because it got my attention, and right then I see this orb, like it wasn't on my arm, but it was just above it, and it like sort of flashed, and I was almost looking right at it because of the feeling
Right.
I just had. But
Right.
it didn't reflect off of sort of the reflective inner part of the door. It didn't light my arm up like you would imagine if there was really a light source there, like a lightning bug.
Yeah.
You would
Yeah.
see sort of it affecting the environment, and it wasn't. So I think it's a third eye thing because of that. I don't think if
I'm
somebody
thinking.
was looking over in the car, they would have been like, "Oh yeah, I saw it too." Or even if I had a camera going, I don't know that it would have captured it. But I
Yeah.
clearly saw it. You know.
Yeah. I don't. I think it's like tuning in, to a dial. Like I think we observe in different ways. We've been locked into observing our reality within these five senses, but there's other ways to observe the reality. And
Yeah.
like I was just describing, that's one of the weave. Seeing the weave is a different way. But I think as well having a sense of these things. I think as our frequency increases, um, it's like tuning in a dial, and you're able to pick up and read things that are at that frequency. So,
Yeah.
and that's really how the reality can switch. How we can manifest in that abundant awareness state is as simple as tuning a dial.
That's so funny because I just watched a video before we went on, like probably an hour ago, talking about if you want to remember your dreams more, a lot of times you wake up in a different frequency than you were having your dreams. And if you can
Mm,
sort of quiet that natural state, because you naturally shift, your brain naturally shifts frequencies as you wake up, and you move into more of the alpha and then the beta or whatever. So what it was saying is if you can just quiet your mind, you can tune back into the dream and remember more of it, like tuning a dial, like you're just talking about.
Well, that's really funny that you say that because I really feel like when I do dream interpretation and when somebody's like telling me their dream, that's why it's hard to do like just with an email, just something I can't really do an interpretation like that, but um, because I'm tuning into the frequency. There's some process that I do that, and it, you've seen me,
Yeah, it's the same for me with BQH sessions. Yeah.
and that I'm tuning into and I know this, I'm tuning into the frequency of your dream. I'm
Mm-hmm.
tuning it as you're telling me the dream. I'm tuning and recalling it. I think that's it. As you're recalling from that frequency. And I recognize that too, that when recalling dreams, especially really vivid, powerful dreams, that I'm doing recollection by pulling in that resonance and that frequency. And that's really how I do it when I'm like cock my head even and and listen to that
Yeah.
frequency and tune in, and then I walk through the story with you.
Mm-hmm.
I walk through the scene. I literally picture myself at beside you walking through all of this, and I experience it along with you, right?
That's
And
amazing. That's exactly how it is for me with the BQH, is tuning
yeah,
in. That's why I say I don't need video because I'm not looking at anyway. I've got my eyes closed and I'm like tuning in my own meditative state, rocking, doing what I do, and I'm like right there with them
yeah.
as they're explaining things. And a lot of times I'll
Mhm.
ask for confirmation. Like they're like, I see a train going by. I'm like, is it going left to right or right to left? And then they'll tell me. I'm like, okay, I'm tuned into it. It was going the same way for me. And so I've
You're
done little
there in that
things.
moment.
Yeah.
In that moment, as you're recalling and retelling, that's how I feel. Like I am there in that moment by
Even
your shoulder,
Yeah, even if they're
by your
thousands of
side.
miles away, it doesn't matter. There is
Doesn't
no
matter.
distance or time or any of that when you can lock into that frequency and you can be there with the person. You know.
I think that's it. And I think as that abundant awareness comes in, that ability is like, what I just got a picture of. It's like Back to the Future in the beginning of the movie when he plugs in all the amps
Oh yeah, yeah. He turns the big dial up.
and turns the big dial. So it's like right now, we're learning with that, little dial, our dial's getting like bigger and bigger, and that's eventually to the point where that vibe. But that's it, isn't it? Even that metaphor itself is it's a red like that's what happens. The vibe, he's blown away in that moment because of the level of frequency and vibration that is coming from the speakers,
Mm-hmm.
right? When he's playing that music, it actually moves the air.
Yeah,
It actually pushes and lifts him off his feet,
yeah.
right? So
And
that
it's
power
tuning
and
into that
ability
connection and making it stronger, like you're
is there
saying.
within frequency
Yeah.
to move and shift your environment.
In
So
reality.
yeah, it's all about the dial. But again, beware of the need to control, because that's how you can end up tuning into the wrong frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Your need to be on a certain channel, and you always want to be tuning in higher, tuning in higher. um
And
yeah.
another thing that's come to me recently is that your state of resonance, where you're at, if you're sort of in a low vibe, your intuition is tapping into a lower vibe too. So it's
Hmm.
like the higher vibe you are, the more you can trust your intuition because you're tapping into a higher frequency. You're like over and above those ankle biters. You know what I mean? They become ankle biters at that
Yeah,
point, or even below that. And, your high
I
vibe.
say beware dire warnings. Beware of dire warnings,
Yeah.
because when you're really walking in the flow, that is just not even,
No fear.
it's not a reality.
Mm-mm.
So
You're over and above all the chaos
integrating
and fear.
dire warnings is not where you want to be. Yeah, that's not the frequency you want to be at. I think you got to be coming from a place that you really understand. I think at your core that game is already won. Like we said, that chess game is already won.
It's sort of like you're
That
getting pulled into a sandbox you don't have to play in. You know what I mean?
exactly.
And that's
Yeah.
that's sort of the trap because if they can
Mm-hmm.
pull you into those sandboxes, then you're automatically at that lower vibe where it's like there's wars in heaven. The angels are struggling to keep up with the demons and all of this, and then you're like sort
Yeah.
of worried about it. You're like, I hope they pull through, but you can rise above all that and realize that everything is working like a well-oiled machine, and everything's
Yeah.
working out well. You know.
Yeah. And I think, you know what, we this whole stepping into boxes, and you can feel like, well, you want to know a truth, or you want to know what a found a truthful foundation, or whether it's this thing or the other thing, right? And um what we were talking about earlier, it's kind of with the whole Epstein, and whether or not Epstein didn't kill himself, um this whole suicide, and he didn't kill himself, and um
The,
always be willing to, like, you be like, yeah, he was murdered. It was either one or the other, but they're both under the assumption that he's dead. and and now I'm not saying that he's dead or he's not dead. I don't know, but
it's
it's
interesting. We're fed two different scenarios, and it's like, it's
be
got to be this or it's got to be
beware.
that.
Just beware of, I think, that's when you start to see that weave. You can be aware where it does put you in a box, because you're then eliminating possibilities outside of it. It's like, how willing are you to release what you think, how willing are you to let those boxes go? To me, you think, and then you find out you don't know. And I mean, that's a big part of this process that I got to. I think one of the wisest things I could ever say is to realize that I know nothing, and just be constantly willing to realize that I know nothing, and let that go, and listen to a higher truth. So
And a lot of times you're fed, you need to
circles.
make a choice of either this or that. And many times you
Hmm.
don't have to make a choice. You're like, I'd rather
You
just
don't,
watch and see how
exactly.
it plays out. I don't need to
I mean,
join
I
a
can
side.
laugh at the memes, and I can find them funny and everything, but I just always kind of want to just be aware, step like that's kind of one way we can step in those boxes. I still I love the joke of it. I think it's hilarious. I'm just not attached to the outcome of whether he did or he didn't, or because it has no consequence to me
Right.
ultimately, whether he did or he didn't do, or he's dead or he's not dead, or whatever it is. Ultimately, it has no consequence on my reality, because I firmly believe that that one outcome, that ascension, that is the end game, that is the end result, that is already won. So what does any of that matter,
The
right?
evolution of human
Which you can
consciousness.
find it funny, you can, but just always be willing to like let it all go.
Because as soon
Let
as you sort of take a side or jump into that, then you could unwittingly or unknowingly or out of ignorance just push one of those narratives because you think, well, it's clearly not that, so it must be this. And then you start, so you'll see a lot of this in the truther community. It must be this. It's more conspiratorial to take
mm-hmm,
this route. So this is probably the truth, but it might not be either one
mm-hmm.
of those. It could be something completely different. It could be that it was all faked and he got let out. Maybe he gave somebody $1 billion or anything. You
Yeah.
never know what the truth is.
Well, that's
But it's
it,
a
and it keeps
distraction.
expanding. It keeps expanding, and the ultimate truth, I think, is, I mean, that's really what this light, this God light, it's truth and love. It's the ultimate love and truth, and the power then that comes with that ultimate love and truth, and that's what we will be able to experience, a state of being. So it outs itself. It's nothing you need to do,
Right. That's why I say it's a
right?
distraction because at the
It's
end of the
all it is.
day,
At the
what are
end
you
of
going
the
to
day,
do with
it's
the information one way or the other? What are you going to do with it? Are you just going to sit on it? Are you going to worry about it? That's why I say it's okay to observe it, but don't get invested in it too much because it might
and
not be
don't for
anything.
1 second think that it is going to change what's coming in. I hope I can express that. And you can, I mean, I know that there's plenty of people that aren't going to believe that, but I just have to say those words,
Right?
that don't think for 1 second that anything that they can do is
Yeah.
going to change what is coming. And I think, as like I said, as we see those synchronicities pick up and increase, as we see time is increasing,
Yeah.
all of these experiences coming quicker and quicker, so too is this end of game. And the end of game is not our end of days, it's the end of their ability to even think that they can control outcomes,
Yeah.
because that's what they can't hold on. There'll come a point where no matter what, they will have to reckon with the fact that they cannot and do not have that control, and will never have it again.
And I say it
Every
often.
one
It's
of us
like
will have to reckon with that.
their worst nightmare is that we all wake up and become these avatars like Jesus, where we're healing, we're manifesting, we're doing things, and
We're not
it.
even listening to them.
You know what's so funny is that you were bringing this up before we went live about they've even got you thinking that we need this technology to be released so we can
Mm,
have free energy, so we can have this, and there is that the Wingmakers talks about these two paths we can go: the transhumanist path where everything's technological, AI is doing it all for us, but they present that because those things we can do naturally. We have the ability to do all of
yeah,
those things, telepathy and all of
another
that without
deception.
that. Not that it's bad to have technology, but they want you to think that that's the only way to achieve what we're
And
wanting to
that they
achieve.
are the ones, that they have that much power, that they are the ones that are withholding
And we
those
can't have
gifts
it.
those
That's
gifts from you.
Yeah, we can't have it till they release it, but that's not true.
And that's it. And the waiting for them to release the technology, again, you're waiting for something outside of yourself.
And it's back in
Because
the victim mentality as well,
yes,
you know?
yes, because the truth of the power of um our own healing ability,
Yeah.
it's just, yeah. What happens when you have thousands of people walking the earth with the gift of healing, like Christ?
Yeah.
What happens then? Are you going to care about technology?
Why would you care? Jesus. Okay, so one of the
I'd
technologies
much
is
rather get a hug from Jesus than get stabbed by a piece of technology.
right. And I'd much rather pass around, buckets of fish and bread and
Yeah,
have people limitlessly pull out of that basket what they need rather than having
exactly.
a replicator that they supposedly have that they can,
Exact.
you know.
Exactly.
Jesus didn't use any of that.
No,
Not that I know of.
no. So, I think that's it. That's another great way they sort of they try to keep this awakening, this great awakening, this ascension as something being outside of ourselves, and that whether it's waiting for events or waiting, any of these pivotal moments, or
Right. That
even
that
thinking
needs
that
to
we have to
happen
wait
before.
for this chess game to be over in order to have that awareness.
Well, we don't. It's already happening.
It is, and it's coming in very strongly now. Um,
So
yeah, and we're
rejoice, you
seeing,
guys. Rejoice.
yeah,
It's
that's what I'm feeling. We're coming up to the holiday season, and I think we're going to see some amazing interactions, with families. And I'm sure there's going to be maybe some friction too, but I think there's going to be a lot of surprises, and being able to have conversations with people in a new light, in a new way. I really hope a lot of people experience that, and experience that energy and feeling that joy, because I do think, and you mentioned it, I think before we went on the show, the energy that's coming in December. We've got the 12 the
yeah. The
full
full
moon,
moon, you guys, is
the
on.
21st, and I'm really feeling like what we're talking about is this 12 this pivotal again. And I'm not projecting that this is like the one moment that's going to happen, but it is again, this 2012 energy, this elimination of timelines to this one, and that energy coming through again, I think really powerfully, in December. We're really going to feel it, I think.
Yeah, so I looked
So
up the full moon right before we went on, wondering when it was, and the next one in December comes at 12:12 a.m. Eastern time on 12:12. So 12:12 12:12. I loved it. You know,
so does that tell you? Yeah.
yeah, I love the synchronicity with it.
Yeah. So
But it's a rung on
obvious.
the ladder, and we're like climbing it and climbing it. So yeah, it's not the end of it all date, but things
No,
are happening, shifting all the time.
but I think that there has been a lot of reminders, like affirmation reminders, that have been placed in my view, to show that, I think it's going to bring on a massive awareness of that 2012 energy, what that meant. Like the fact that this looking glass information coming up again at this moment, and that hitting, because I was seeing in the comments, Q sent me. So
Oh,
I
did he actually post the link to that
I
video, you
have
think?
to I have to check. He may have. I mean, if that's the case, I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're seeing masses of people get this information.
Yeah.
Um, it's really going to escalate things. It's really going to allow them to see what that was all about, what this 2012 was all about, what this means, what it's leading to, where it's going, and that it's inevitable. So don't worry about what they're doing.
I
Mm.
think I will definitely be meditating on that day. I recommend everyone does if you
Mm.
can on that 12/12 full moon, and I think we can do more good like that than probably doing a
Yeah.
show personally. But yeah, I would say pull it in. Well, we'll have a show a few days before that to remind you guys, but I think there's certain times when we should just sort of be present, centered,
Just
and just pull that energy in. I think we can be more effective that way because we're still
yeah.
doing it as a group, even if we're off, in nature or at home.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I agree. Yeah. And we're still, I think that we tune in. I've seen evidence of that as well, a lot more lately, of feeling the meditation of others.
mm-hmm. The
So
connectedness of it.
yeah. And I think tapping into, like, when somebody's tapping into you, and being aware of that,
Mm-hmm.
being aware that somebody's thinking of you, and tapping into that. Um so yeah, being aware of that connection, even if we're not, face to face or whatever.
That's why I think breathing's so important that we were talking about earlier, because like, your heart rate and things like that, the autonomous systems of the body, the breathing's automatic, but it's the one thing you can take over, you know?
Yeah.
You can take over, you can
Yes.
breathe deeper, you can breathe in. I think, who was it? I think John earlier said breathing in that love through your heart when you're breathing in, and really visualize that. And you can, even if you
Yeah.
get triggered and you're like PO'd about something, you can still breathe it in at that moment. You're like, wow, even then I was able to, all that other stuff falls away when you're tapping into that highest source God energy coming in. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it seems silly at that point. You're like, oh, wow, that was pretty silly for me to get triggered by that. And then you just breathe that in. You can feel that bliss. And all day long, if you can just take a moment, I think Greg Brayton was talking about resonating in that feeling all the time. Because
Hmm.
maybe you can't meditate all the time, but you can resonate in that feeling all the time and always
Yeah.
keep yourself in that feeling. And when the world does that, look out. You know what I mean? We're shifting big time then.
That's it. And yeah. And it doesn't, it doesn't happen overnight. It's really that drop in a bucket. But I'm really finding that, the build of all of those buckets is filling all of the time of my day. It's like for every drop that I put in being aware of my breath and the gift it was that I was giving to myself in doing meditation, and that what it would build for me, um and how it would instill and create that habit. It's like it's filling in my experience. It's filling in, it's replacing, that's what's replacing time. um
Yeah.
is my breath and being within that, within, as opposed to the ticking of a clock
Yeah.
and watching the seconds of a clock and being attached to that. um
That's so funny because it's almost the opposite of somebody setting a date and then looking forward to that date, and then the date not coming and you feel destroyed because you thought, oh my gosh, I thought we were going to get, taken up or taken out of here or raptured or whatever, or we're going to have this flash and ascend on this date, and nothing ever happened. But once you realize this whole breathing thing, you can breathe in that all the time. I mean, it's always available in the now moment,
yeah.
and it doesn't matter what's going on around you. It really
Yeah.
doesn't.
No.
It's always available, you know?
You have to choose to focus on that, because if you want to revert back to your mind and all the reasons that your mind will give you of why to play a victim, or why to be sorry for yourself, or why you have a right to feel negatively, or feel or stay in a low vibration, and it can justify all of those reasons. But at the end of the day, that is not going to produce
It's going to bring
uh,
more of that to you.
results of, yeah, what we want to experience, right?
Yeah.
um and how to get the, so it's a catch 22. It's like, so you can't let your mind talk you into it. You have to listen to your heart. And I think that's when your heart can pop in and use humor.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
That
To
happens
come
quite
in
a
and
bit.
try to lighten things up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And
hmm,
and I want to say something about intuition because we'll get things intuitively, and we, yeah, breathe in that good ass prana, magic sister.
yeah, baby.
But yeah, we can. A lot of times we'll get intuition about something, which is a right brain activity, and then our left brain, the analytical part, will sit there and dissect it. Well, they're going to think you're crazy. They're going to think blah 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 blah, and then we end up not acting on it. But if we get that intuition about something, we should just
Hmm.
act on it and not worry about it because, of course, the ego is going to talk you out of it if you allow it to. So don't
Well,
wait. I had somebody
yeah,
send me an email and they were like, I almost didn't send this, and then this synchronistic thing happened. I'm like, please don't ever let your left brain talk you out of stuff. If you have a feeling about something, act on it right away.
yeah.
You know.
I just want to add that having a nurturing relationship, like a caring and an empathetic relationship with
Mm-hmm.
that side of your brain, as opposed to fighting against an argumentative and trying to shut it up and shut it down, and just quiet it and put it in a corner. Having built a caring and nurturing relationship with that voice, where you understand where it's coming from. You've taken the time to understand and hear it of where it's coming from. So it's feeling heard, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's feeling heard, and you have that conversation, and it's feeling cared for, and it's being reassured that it's okay. Everything's okay. It's
Right.
okay. I understand why you feel like that. I
Mm-hmm.
understand why you're used to saying things that way or looking at things like that. That's okay. I understand that part of me,
Yeah.
and and have compassion for it, not judgment, not just shut it up. No, I don't. No, I don't want to. I just shut it out. I don't want to think like that. Like taking that time to sit and breathe and care, having that compassion for that side of yourself.
Well, I
It
think a
then
lot of times we associate with it, though. We feel like it's us. And once you sort of take a step back and you realize, this is the left brain. It's serving its purpose. It's analyzing the
it's
situation.
an
But
aspect.
get
Yeah.
to the point where you're like, listen, I understand what you're saying, but you've just been overruled by the heart. In this instance, I'm going to act on
Yeah.
what the heart says. So, yeah, it's hearing it, but, and
But
understanding it.
it's like you can come back into an understanding, heart and mind,
Mm-hmm.
in an open communication,
All right.
and still maintaining that open communication. And because I think that needs to be said, because I bring it up a lot too about, how that sort of pops in, and we do just want to shut it out, turn it out. That's not the way to be. And, and we don't want to resonate that, but that process can become so much easier if we develop a more compassionate relationship with ourselves than our ego mind. Because then what happens is when we come across these people that would normally trigger us, it's so easy for us to see that that's just that side of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's just that part of them. And that part has been driving the car for a really long time. It doesn't know any other way to be. And that's where the forgiveness and the compassion can come from us. And
Yeah.
it's not that we go and take a ride with them and get in the car with them then because we have compassion and empathy, but it allows us to understand them and have, so if they do ridicule, they do trigger, if we have those, it doesn't affect us in the same way. We can have that same kind of compassionate uh conversation with them that we have learned to manage to have with ourselves, in understanding our own egoic mind and how it always wants to drive the car and how it did that previously, and learning how to talk to it. You can then apply that to other people, and you will have so much more patience, you will have so much more compassion, and you don't necessarily need to get embroiled in their drama and help them. You're not really helping them by feeding their narrative necessarily, right? By feeding into people's narratives. So, but you can have a compassion for them, and where they're at,
Like Jesus
and just
said,
respect it at that.
forgive them for they know not what they do. And
That's
it's
how
reaching that
that
point where you can
is.
recognize that, you can rise above it, and you can actually say, just like with yourself, forgive yourself for you know not what you do when you do wrong. Nobody's doing wrong
Yeah.
on purpose, typically. It's just out of their own ignorance that they are. And I think this is important leading into the holidays, and I want to touch on this before I forget, because what you're saying is a lot of times we'll go, we'll meet up with families, and on the way there, we're like, oh gosh, it's going to be all this drama. There's going to be all this debating. It's going to be, I'm trying to explain this, but they're going to say this. We're like creating this whole thing before we even get there,
Well,
right?
you're working from your ego and your need
Exactly.
to be right in a conversation, to assert your point of view onto somebody else, to make them see something that they don't want to see, as opposed to just respecting to really not even having to be, even if they're right up in your face saying, I don't, you'd be like, okay,
But I think, if let's try something different this year. Why don't we go and just try to love people? Not to try to push
yeah,
any agenda or belief or not try to wake anybody up. Let's have a year of just loving people, and they're going to be more open to what you have to say if they come to you and ask you, rather than if you
yeah,
start off preaching right off the bat. So if you've tried that in the past, it hasn't worked, try something new. Just try to love people. Try to enjoy the time you have with them. You see them maybe once a year, once every few years. Just enjoy the divine essence of God that's in all of these people and just love them.
Be
And
aware of your energy more than your words
yeah,
in the presence of
because
others.
that's going to be, they're going to feel that
It's
much
more
more.
important. Yeah, it's more important what you're emitting in your presence of being, feeling that, being that light bulb, as opposed to the words that you can speak. Because every time you're just speaking words, you're creating a story. It can be as simple as just emitting that presence, of being that presence in the room, and then watching that presence, the energy of that presence alone shift the energy of the room. Your words are not required. Your loving presence
But
is
sometimes we feel
what is being
responsible.
called.
We feel responsible to wake people up. We feel responsible to defend the truth. And that's all the ego. The truth will stand on its own. You know, people will wake up when
Yeah,
they're ready. It's not your job. It's really your job to love. It's really quite that simple. It's have compassion and love. Beyond
yeah,
that is the ego trying to get in there and control people. You know,
yeah, yeah. So just step out of the drama sandbox and just be
absolutely.
you. Be the one, and that doesn't matter what's going. You're just being it, and you may look like a fool,
Yeah.
and they may think you're a fool. But who cares?
I think anybody that's
Who
honest
cares?
will say, "Well, I went in there so high vibe, and this happened, and they got triggered, and then there was this debate, and then you leave there feeling low vibe." So, evidently, that wasn't the route to take, or you would have left there still feeling high vibe. You would have been shining your light the whole time. So, the way to really protect that is to just love. You know?
Yeah. You know what? And when you're in the presence of another space, another home, around different people, again, be guided by your intuition. Be drawn to the things that catch your eye, or bring, as opposed to being pulled into the distractions. Being tuned in the moment. Spend the time with the children, not the adults.
Oh, that's a great
To
idea.
the simplicity of that. You know what? If you don't want to focus on the adult um, conversations, then
Yeah, go get
you
on
can
Indian
you can
style and
put
play with the
you can
kids.
be somewhere else in the room.
Yeah,
You can go sit with grandma in the corner,
yeah,
even when everybody's arguing in the kitchen,
right.
right?
Yeah.
You can play with the kids and help them set up their toys. You can
It's
do
your
something
decision to get
else.
pulled into the drama, is what we're trying to say.
Yeah,
You don't have to.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you could just sit back and enjoy the show if everybody else is arguing and keep your
You can leave
vibes
the
high.
room, go wash the dishes, so you got an excuse. Who
Right.
cares?
Yeah. Absolutely.
There's lots of routes you can take. Look for the joy in the experience. Find the joy that's available around you, because it's not blocked out. It's only your perception that's blocking it out. So it just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And try it. Most of us have tried the other way and it didn't work. So
Mm-hmm.
try a new way and see how it works. And
Yeah.
then your light's going to shine so much brighter, you know.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. So I guess we'll be back next week. Let's see,
Mm-hmm.
the 26th. Let's see, we'll have less than a month till Christmas after the next one. That's gosh,
Crazy.
it's flown by so fast. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it really has. Well, I missed you. It's great to. We could probably go on for like another hour, because I
Oh,
know
and I feel I
that's
do feel
cool.
the
Yeah.
energy of those watching too. Such high vibe energy flowing through. I'm like hot and gosh.
Yeah,
I mean,
somebody touched me on the back when I was doing the show. I don't know, about halfway through the show, I was doing this because something I actually put, like, I felt a palm on my back like this, touch the center of my back like that. I was like, what? Just,
well,
so I
happy
don't
orb
know.
hunting, you guys. Lots of love and light to
Yeah,
you guys. Thank you so much for being here, Michelle.
I
Can't wait
love
for the
you.
next
Bless
one.
you all. Thank you.
I love you.
Thank
Peace, you
you.
guys.
Peace.
If you'd like to support the work I do, go to paypal.me/UOTF. Thanks.